so-called flying saucers.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA. It's rotating.
Welcome to Kill the Stigma. First of all, I want to send some prayers to the people in LA, California, dealing with those wildfires. Prayers are with you. Okay, today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're not going to cover the news. We're not going to talk about drones. We're going to talk about the freaking men in black. For a long time, there has been cases of mysterious agents showing up to people that collect very good UFO evidence. No one knows who they are. People speculate it's the Air Force, the CIA, the National Security, whatever, NSA, what you name it. But we don't really know. And the more you dig into it, the more you realize this gets weird and mysterious. So I was listening to James Fox talking in Area 52, and I got inspired to do a show on this since I've researched this topic quite a bit. I think the men in black are, well, there's two different kinds, right? There's probably the government type, and then there's the real men in black. The real men in black, I don't think the government. In fact, I don't even think they're human. I think they're something else. And I'm gonna try to prove that to you. Right now, I'm gonna prove it to you. Now, please, I'm actually pretty nervous about doing this topic. I know it sounds silly, but I've kind of found a lot of disturbing things when it comes to this topic of the men in black. Like people disappearing, for example. The program, James Fox, he covers a case, the Calvin case. 2 guys disappeared. Gone. And James Fox talks about it in the show with Area 52, which is a great channel, Chris Ramsey. And he says that he took a long time for this guy to come forward, this Scottish guy, and he finally came forward, and he was drunk. He's like, I've been calling him, he was ghosting me. One day the guy gets drunk. He had a few pints, and you can tell actually when he did the interview that he was kind of drinking. He's like, I'm called James Fox, he's like, I'm ready. And basically, he was a first-hand witness to this car that pulls up and takes the 2 witnesses, spooks the hell out of them, and then a month later, they're gone. To make things worse, they're not the only ones that have disappeared. So please, men in suits, I'm just telling it out there. Just come talk to me and I'll shut up before you do anything drastic. But it's an important topic. James Fox is covering it, and I'm gonna follow it. Now, James Fox gets into so many cases that I did not know had an MIB experience. And I was like, wow, Kenneth Arnold. Let me show you guys.
I got to interview Kenneth Arnold's daughter, Kim Arnold. She's in The Phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I got to spend a couple of days with her and her daughter. And it was amazing to get the backstory because, you know, you have that phenomenal case in June of 1947, which pretty much was the beginning of the modern UFO wave. And it's where they coined the phrase flying saucer because he described it as a saucer skipping over water. And one of the reporters was like, flying saucer. And he was catapulted into the headlines all across the nation, all across the world. I mean, the Kenneth Arnold thing was huge, right? And a little backstory, she's like, oh yeah, my father was really, really famous. He was recognizable walking on the streets. Like everybody knew Kenneth Arnold. And he was going to go on just a little side story, but he was going to go on like a tour. He wrote a book and he was going to go like do all these conferences and he got a visit. And I was like, he got a visit? Really? She goes, oh yeah, he got a visit from men in suits, came in and they made it very clear he was not going to be doing that.
No way. He got spooked.
He got majorly spooked. She said
early.
That was my first experience hearing about these so-called, men in suits. I hate to use the word men in black because it's got so much baggage.
Disney.
You know what I mean?
It.
Yeah. So I call it men in dark suits,
Fair enough.
But it was like that really kind of started in 1947 and I reported on it even recently in the program. But in any case, sort of as a side.
You think that was Blue Book? No, that was before Blue Book. That was way prior to Blue Book.
It was before I think anything really started because you had Project Sign.
Yeah.
Which started at some point in 47 or 48. Then you had Project Grudge.
So what was that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But he was going to go on tour and they came and visited him and they threatened him, according to her. And this is what she told me. It was her dad.
Wow.
Like they threatened him. Like this is a big desert out here or something like that. A big wilderness area. That's what she said. And I believe she even said that on camera. I should probably go digging for that and release it out into the public.
But that's not the first time you've encountered that type of spooky behavior.
No, but that was the earliest. 47.
Since then, you've encountered quite a few stories of people being told to, keep their mouth shut. Has that ever come across your plate?
So, Kenneth Arnold, I don't know if we all know, but Kenneth Arnold, June 24, 1947, he sees a bunch of what they call it flying saucers, whatever. I'm not going to go into that sighting, but it went... Mainstream news picked it up, it blew up, and the whole modern wave of UFOs started. But 3 days before that, Maury Island. In Maury Island, you guys have to look this up. Maury Island incident was a very important case. Now, Edward Ruppelt wrote a book in 1952 or 1956, I can't remember, apologize for that, called... I can't remember. But it was a very important book. Edward Ruppelt was the head of Project Blue Book till 1952. Then he resigned. And he said the Maury Island case was a hoax, but it's not a hoax. I guarantee it. There's a lot there. But this guy got a visit, the witness got a visit right after. I think his name was Harold Dahl, not sure. Right after his sighting. But this guy in a black suit shows up to his house, and this guy knows every detail about his life. He takes him out to breakfast, but he's like, the guy shows up at 6:30, right when he wakes up. He knows everything about his life. He knows what time he drinks his coffee. He knows every little detail about his life. And it spooked him, right? And Kenneth Arnold starts looking into this sighting. And he also gets spooked. He's staying in a hotel with, I forgot the guy's name. It's a very important case, very important. Everybody thinks about Roswell. Please, Maury Island incident, look it up. Very important. And they are freaked out. They're in a hotel getting strange phone calls. And they think the hotel's bugged, but there's nobody there. And they think they're getting spied on and they're getting weird phone calls. They're getting all the... That's it. Kenneth Arnold stayed quiet after that. So I'm sure there was a visit to him that we haven't heard. And that's another question. How many people haven't we heard of? I mean, think about it. Everybody that gets some Men in Black experience. You think they all go out there and say, I got Men in Black? Not everybody's as brave as Anna Paulina Luna. Respect. Anyway, no. A lot of people, I guarantee 90% of the people stay quiet. So, why do I think that they're not government or that they are something else? Maybe a breakaway civilization, I don't know. Because of these strange things. And we're gonna compile a volume of cases and we're gonna realize details of them. A lot of times they're twins. Not only do they dress the same, but they're literally twins. Like, they look the same, they're waxy, they act strange. They know details they shouldn't know about your life, and they seem to disappear and vanish. Now, what triggers them? Good evidence. Good evidence. So, yeah, let's keep on going. Listen a little bit more of Area 52 with James Fox.
So I probably heard about these intimidators. They obfuscate, they intimidate, they're intimidating, and they come, and if there's evidence, they'll take the evidence, or they'll try to take the evidence. They try to get the witnesses terrified to not talk. And I'd heard about these since probably the first time when I was investigating the Phoenix Lights case in the 90s, and I did a couple of films, covered a couple films on that whole thing. I heard about the first, visitation, real serious visitation of these so-called, men in dark suits.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd heard about it like a number of other times. I heard about it with 1950 with the McMinnville, Oregon case,
Right.
that she got a visit. It was Paul and Evelyn Trent. And Evelyn had talked about her husband was out of the town, and this guy showed up and rummaged through her hole from some unknown government agency. And that was 1950. Then I heard about it with Rex Heflin from, I think, Santa Ana, 65. He had a visit with these guys in suits, and I ignored that one, didn't report on it, didn't report on the 51, didn't report on the one from the Phoenix Lights case. And then I heard a number of other cases in the United States. Then I heard about some cases in Europe, didn't report on it.
Always American?
Yeah, always. There's an unknown government agency in the U.S. Yeah, that has the ability to reach anywhere. Like I even interviewed a General Parviz Jafari from the 1970s UFO incident over Tehran, Iran. It's a fascinating case. And he told me, he was like, yeah, the next morning, like the encounter happened in the middle of the night. The next morning, a couple of men from the United States government, I don't know what agency they're from, they were there poking around, asking questions. Wow. I was like, really? And I didn't report on that. But then I was in Brazil, probably on and off for the last, 12, 14 years. But I was in Brazil, and it was probably 2013, maybe 2014. And I was interviewing the mother of two really important witnesses that came, according to them, within 10 feet of a live creature in broad daylight. And the mother talked about these men in suits that showed up at her house. Very intimidating, very scary, and very just scary and intimidating. And they tried to persuade her to get her daughters to lie, and they didn't see what they said they saw, and all this stuff.
Money as well.
They offered a briefcase full of money, and that was it. I was like, okay, these guys exist. I've had enough hearing these stories. I'm going all in. I'm going to report on it, and I did.
That put you over the edge.
That put me over the edge.
Wow.
Yeah. Finally, after all those years, yeah.
You're like, enough of these guys.
Well, I knew it was a slippery slope, and I knew, like, reporting, like, if you look at the history of my investigations and my filmmaking, I had heard about Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Of course, I mentioned the Roswell incident, one of my first films, but in terms of like an alleged close encounter of the third kind, when you've got witnesses reporting entities, beings, creatures, whatever, connected to the craft, that to me was a slippery slope, and I just avoided it for over 20 years, probably 25 years, I don't know. And it was same with the MIB, because I just thought, like, I can't prove it. It just sounds so out there.
Yeah.
It just sounds kind of crazy.
It sounds cliche almost.
Sounds cliche, exactly. And so I finally said, oh, the hell with it.
So here he went to the Phoenix Lights, the picture from 1950, which is like a great picture of a flying saucer. Many other cases that these things just keep showing up. Brazil, where there was a crash. It seems like these guys are very interested in crashes, or when there's NHI or bodies around. The more important the case is, the more the evidence they show up. But doesn't mean, it's kind of like you don't really know when they're going to show up. But whatever they think is important, they'll be there swiftly, almost like they're prepared for it. So if they're prepared for it, how? Why? How do they show up that fast? How do they know? How do they know every little detail of a person's life? You know, James Fox says it over and over again. It's like they have an omnipresence. I guarantee if you ask James Fox, he will agree with me that these guys are something else. Anybody who's had an experience with these guys, I guarantee they hold back. They definitely have to hold, they'll hold back because it gets too weird and you lose credibility. And perhaps that's the point. Perhaps that's the point. Make it so weird that nobody's gonna take you seriously. It's a genius counterintelligence tactic. Very smart indeed. So, I'm gonna compile a few different cases, but I suggest you guys watch Encounters, episode 3. They show up in a case there where there's a giant alien in somewhere in the UK, I think, and the lady's talking about, this is on Netflix. These guys are twins. They show up and they seem robotic almost. Now, we do have a case from Canada of 2008 where there was actually a video of the men in black and they look like twins. Like, what about Ingo Swann, the book Penetration, where he talks about spooks. These spooks, right? And Axel Rod had 2 twins with him. Could they be men in black? You know, twins. The Canada case that I'm about to show you, 2008, the guys came in, they spooked the heck out of the lady in the hotel. Like she says they could read their mind. And guess what? I also thought that it was a hoax. Did some research into it, not a hoax. I'm convinced it happened. But what I like to do is I like to accumulate data, right? And how many times has it happened? Is it 1 story, 2 stories, 3 stories, 4 stories, and start getting a pattern? That's how I like to do it. I don't care about scientific evidence. That's not me. But if that's you, fine. I'm going down, if I want to go down the rabbit hole as deep as I want, I can. You know, I'm convinced this is what's going on, right? Or I think, and a lot of people don't even think about this. They're convinced that the men in black are just the NSA or the Air Force. And the question is, if they showed up to Luna and Matt Gaetz, because they said they didn't identify themselves, which is typical with these guys, can they show up to the president? Well, Donald Trump actually disclosed the drone situation on the day after, you know, he gets elected with the truth, or with some guys like the national security advisor is gonna be with 2 guys in black suits, so they're gonna get spooked. I don't know, guys. This is a little bit far-fetched, and I really don't wanna mix the men in black with the program because I don't know. That's a little bit too far. I'm just saying these guys are real, mysterious, and I don't know. But here, let's compile a few cases. We're gonna touch on the Las Vegas case. I'll show you a little bit of that. But first, let's look. So Las Vegas case is important. 2023, not 1947, 50s, and 60s. We're gonna also show you a few guys from the government. James Lakatsky and Colin Keller are talking about them. And James Lakatsky has a little bit more of a positive view on it. And I don't know if I agree with it, but anyway, first, let's start with Canada.
No one's gonna die, are they?
No. Sovar reported that the witnesses described the men as tall with black suits, black hats, identical faces, extremely pale skin, no eyebrows, no eyelashes, and abnormally large eyes. A woman who spoke with the men claimed that she felt that the men knew what she was thinking.
So, there the guys come in the hotel, and we have the person that witnessed that these guys being completely spooked, saying that she thought they could read his mind. And the guys enter the hotel, nobody sees them leave. They pull up in a car and nobody sees them leave. They just vanish. The same thing happening with Brazil. when the lady comes out with her, she's got her daughters. These guys are usually not by themselves. Sometimes they are, but usually it's 2 or 3. And they vanish. The lady comes out, follows them. This guy's coming off for her money, telling her to shut up. She's like, I can't do that. She's got values. She believes in truth, and I'm not gonna make my daughters lie. And then she goes after them, and they just vanished. Guys, the best video I've seen of a UFO. So there's controversy. There was a lot of controversy. There's this guy called Chris Lato. He's an Air Force pilot. About 1.5, 2 years ago, he put a video of a flying saucer. This guy who catches it, and you can see the skin of it. It's like, it was an amazing video, but there was a lot of controversy in it. Allegedly, they're like, you couldn't prove it. So allegedly, some guy said it wasn't a perfect debunk, but it was close enough to cause the, how do you say this? The video into question. What happened was, it was in Australia. This guy takes this video, and I thought it was amazing. And what was convincing to me, because I like listening to people and their tone of voice and the body language. And the guy seemed very authentic to me, but the problem was he couldn't get his girlfriend to help him and support him, and he thought he would. So he's telling Chris Lato this, and I'm telling you, this guy, if this video was real, it would be the best video of a UFO ever. And like I was saying yesterday, what's a common trend? Good evidence. Question is, why? Why? Maybe, I'm not really sure why, okay? Because there's some cases that have really good evidence and they don't care, but then others, they do. Now, if you have alien bodies around, these guys will tend to show up, like walking around and stuff. Even reports of like cryptids and stuff, which I'm not really into that topic, but I have read a lot of reports of that, and these things show up. There are people or whatever, I don't know what to call them. John Keel actually writes about that in Trojan Horse and The Eighth Tower, Our Haunted Planet, Mothman Prophecies, all these books, right? He writes about that. And so it's not just UFOs. It's like, I don't know, guys. But before we get into what their purpose is, I was talking about Chris Lato's video. What convinced me was not the video, it was the witness. And I relate with James Fox a lot. I mean, he's saying, I look into their soul. I wouldn't go that deep, but I like to feel a person, right? And by the tone of voice or body language. And this video was so good. I wish I could find it, guys. I'm gonna ask Chris. I don't have, man, I used to have more contact with him back in the day, but I don't, anyway, I'm sorry. So I'm gonna try to find that, but it's a great video, but this guy's saying that his phone got hacked. He was having a lot of weird stuff happen, and at some point, there was a black SUV. I think they crashed into his car. I don't remember. It was some weird stuff, Men in Black style. And he was getting followed by these people, and they spooked his girlfriend, and she couldn't come forward, and then there was no credibility. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It was like 2 years ago in Australia, and Chris, he gave up on it. He's like, listen, this is where I learned my lesson. I'm not putting a video out like this. Like, they were all excited, but yeah, at the end of the day, he couldn't prove it. And you know, that's something else. You don't need Men in Black to show up for good evidence. The better the evidence, the more the controversy. For God's sakes, we got freaking bodies in Peru and nobody cares. So, and I was skeptical of that too. I was very skeptical. Now I'm like, maybe there's something to see here. And by the way, I haven't done my research on that as well. I just have people I trust, that I know, that are kind of saying, yeah, that's weird. You know, one of them has an implant that's still, you know, having somehow working. I don't know. That's a whole other topic. But we don't need these guys to show up. We do it to ourselves. Now, could that be some psychological battle that we're unaware of from some people that have resistance? Maybe, probably. Also, the UFO community is a lot of people are very responsible because they have to be. UFOs need credibility. I am being kind of irresponsible. Earlier I said I don't care about scientific evidence, and that is irresponsible of me. But I'm not a scientist, and I am tired of waiting for scientific evidence because how do you prove something that is way ahead of you? What if it doesn't want us to get scientific evidence? What if I don't have time for scientific evidence? That's how I feel about it, but I acknowledge that it's an irresponsible place. It's an irresponsible stance. But that is my stance and I'm taking it. And I don't know. That's just how I feel, but it is an irresponsible place to be. And I acknowledge it. And I think you guys should not follow my path. I feel like I don't have time for scientific evidence. I know this is a real problem, real issue, and it's a challenge to science. Indeed it is. Especially with the cover up and all that. So, back to Men in Black. Why don't we take a look at the Las Vegas case and we'll see the pattern of twins again and strange behavior here.
About like a reporter or like a journalist, he had came here. I did a part on it in my video 8 months ago. He came here and he's like asking you questions, like a bunch of questions outside your house. And then you said, oh, I can't answer those questions or I can't talk too much about it. And then he told you, is someone telling you not to say it? And you said, I can't say. And then after that, you get a phone call and they're like, get his license plate. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you can't speak on that situation, you do not have to at all.
No,
but I think that's interesting. Like, what was that situation? Can you explain that?
Around that time,
Because what it sounds like is that like NASA or like
like Forge not to talk.
yeah, like, oh, dude, we're watching you, don't say anything. Also, you mentioned that there was government issued cars like driving by your house,
Yes.
like black SUVs, like Men in Black.
Yeah, you could say like Men in Black.
That's how I imagined it.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't like that, but to me, I'm watching this and I'm like just entertained
It
by
was a
it.
Suburban, so we were outside. We're watching a truck.
They're just like parked outside and stuff.
They just passed by and they stopped in the front of the house, and they both look at us at the same time, and
Like there was 3 people and like they both like turn at the same time.
And look at you.
Yeah.
That is so weird, bro. That is weird.
I don't know if for me it looked like they all had like they look identical. Like they look
Really?
Yeah, they look identical. They both had the same glasses and everything.
So, they looked identical. They all turned their heads at the same time when they left. Does that sound weird to you guys? Sounds a little bit strange to me. And we got penetration by Ingo Swans, twins, the Canada case, twins, Las Vegas case, twins. Let's see. Oh, encounters in the 70s, twins. John Keel talks about twins a few times. I mean, are we seeing a pattern or am I the only one? And if it's not, is that unusual to you guys? Or I want to know if that's me, that's only unusual, or if that's normal government agents. Because I'm making the case for this to be non-human intelligence, right? So I need a percent data that supports that. And I think this is an interesting piece of data, but I want to know what you guys think. Now, let's get to the disturbing aspect. I just mentioned the Vegas case, which we talk about, but there is one guy that talks about it a lot. Jim Kirk, Extraterrestrial Reality. You guys should check him out. Scott Ryder and him have done a lot of great work on this. In fact, here's Jim. I'm going to show you Jim talking about the Phoenix Lights. I just talked about Chris Lato, didn't I? And how they took this really good video of a UFO. Well, the Phoenix Lights, we have video of it. So what's the big deal? Well, this guy took a way better video than the one that we all see. And he vanished. He freaking vanished. Just like Calvine, the program. Yes, similar. It's kind of disturbing, but after that, I'm going to show you James Lakatsky and Colm Kelleher talking about the Men in Black. And that's why I kind of struggle, because James Lakatsky says it's something positive. He reverse psychology to get you sucked in and get you down the rabbit hole. But I disagree with him because you're getting one person down the rabbit hole, but then you're turning off a bunch of people by the high strangeness to it. And I just don't buy it. I don't buy that. But we'll get there soon. First, let me show you what Jim Quirk has to say about the Phoenix Lights, which James Fox talked about earlier.
This person, Vicky Verma, has a lot of different UFO articles on this website, howandwhys.com. I will leave the link, and you can check it out for yourself. Anyway, the headline here is Arizona man filmed huge solid UFO in Phoenix Lights. The MIB took video and the man vanished. And this article was just written this month, published this month. Anyway, on the night of March 13th, 1997, the people of the United States witnessed one of the largest and best-known UFO sightings in history. The UAP phenomenon was observed in the skies over the southwestern states of Arizona and Nevada and the Mexican state of Sonora. According to a Rocky Mountain poll conducted at the time, as well as the commotion that ensued, around 10% of Arizonans claim to have witnessed the incident that is now known as the Phoenix Lights. One of the eyewitnesses, named Richard Curtis from Arizona, claiming to have solid evidence of the incident, contacted local councilwoman Frances Barwood. He vanished following an encounter with MIB and a media revelation. Frances Barwood, a member of the city council, opened an investigation into the incident. Since the military and local authorities had already managed to claim that the lights seen by the eyewitnesses were only flares, her co-workers thought her behavior was ludicrous. Barwood received a call from Richard Curtis a few months later. He said right away that he had extremely detailed footage of the Phoenix Lights, despite being an injured former soldier. He claimed that he had personally captured them using high-quality equipment. Here's a quote from Barwood. He said you could see the shape. He said you could see how big it was in comparison to the surrounding buildings and everything. He described that the lights were gaseous. He was so excited that he had gotten all this on video. That's what Barwood recalled him saying to her. Additionally, Curtis admitted to Barwood that he had no idea who else to call and that he trusted her. Since the majority of the Phoenix Lights video footage up until this point had been merely specks of light on a dark background, Barwood was intrigued by this message. Curtis agreed to provide copies of the footage to Barwood's office after she urged him to do so. However, days passed and she did not receive films either by mail or by courier. I thought he made this up. He didn't have video, all this stuff, she said. A week later, Curtis telephoned Barwood at her house and inquired about her thoughts on the films. Barwood informed him that she had not received them and expressed her amazement. Curtis continued by telling her that following their phone call, 2 men from her workplace stopped up at his home. The 2 similar-looking individuals were fully covered in black, 3-piece black suits, black shoes, black hats, black suitcases, etc. And jackets or other gear. Even though it was fairly chilly outside, it struck Curtis as weird. He asked the men if they were from Barwood's office, and they confirmed it. Then they inquired about the Phoenix Lights videos, specifically to find out if Curtis had copied them. They responded that they would make copies for him themselves when he said he had not been able to. Curtis then handed him his videos, and the 2 men left his house in a black sedan. Barwood informed Curtis that she had no men in her office and that all of her staff were female. I have no idea who these guys were. It sounds so bizarre. Nothing made sense to me, Barwood recalled thinking. All of this infuriated Richard Curtis, who concluded that the authorities had misled him. In an interview with Phoenix TV, he discussed everything that had happened, including the Men in Black visit, and that they took his videos. And shortly after that, when Barwood tried to call Curtis, she discovered that he was not answering. When she got to his apartment, he was not there. But the neighbors informed her that Curtis had supposedly taken a faulty medication and had been transported by ambulance to the hospital. There were no records of Curtis ever being admitted to any Phoenix area hospitals when Barwood started looking for him there. Barwood made the decision to have her phone lines checked by a professional when she questioned how the odd men even knew about the tapes. He visited her house and conducted his tests there. After that, he went outdoors. He wouldn't come back in the house. He came to the back door and said, "No, I'm not coming in." "Yes, your phone is tapped. It's a government tap," she said.
All right, guys. So, I'm just walking. So, guys, here's the thing. I got this thing that's super cheap. It just got messed up to hold my phone. It just broke. I know, ghetto. Very ghetto indeed. So that's why I'm walking here. Why I don't have a setup like usual, because I have kids. I have my mom watching them right now, so I can do this episode, right? So I apologize for that, for the ghetto-ness. But let me finish it with this. I'm gonna show you that this happens to government agents. I'm gonna show you James Lakatsky, Colm Kelleher, and Representative Luna. And then I'm gonna close it. But before I do that, I need to give you my opinion. What is the purpose of the Men in Black? Two things. Could it be to keep humanity asleep to this by using counterintelligence tactics how I used? Or is there multiple NHI here? And that is the NHI that takes care of different NHIs coming through wormholes or portals or whatever and doing intelligence on them, because they're always interested in whatever the witness saw, right? There's a 1965 picture where there's a little girl, and this space guy shows up with a freaking weird helmet or whatever. And then they're like, show up to hit that little girl's family, collecting evidence and data. And the Virginia case where you have the weird ones, the Vegas case where you have a crash. A crash is very important for crashes and bodies. So maybe they're collecting data on the NHI, that what are other NHIs? There's multiple NHIs. Maybe, as James Lakatsky and Colm Kelleher say, they work with the Air Force Special Investigation in parallel. He said that. Maybe covert agreements? But I don't know, guys. I'm just spitballing here. So maybe they have multiple purposes. But sometimes it's very disturbing. We just heard Jim Court and James Fox talk about these people that have disappeared. That guy from Phoenix also disappeared. And we know that case is credible because Frances Underwood, I think that was her name. Oh, I don't know if I said that right. They have there was employees of her that saw these guys came and took that data. And employees just gave it to them. So her employees, the data. So she did get that video, but these guys took it away. Always there at the right time. Quick. Now, they don't show up as often anymore. But why? Perhaps it's because we have phones, we have the internet. Like in the 50s, they would show up a lot more in the 60s. But now, they can probably trace things a lot better, if I had to guess, because we have our electronics and all that, and they can just keep a closer eye on us that way. And they don't have to go, this is me guessing, but that would make sense to me. So, if they show up to people in the government, then who is really in charge of the UFO cover-up? And is the program really aligned with these people, or is it just kind of a coincidence? I don't think it is. Like I said, it's a little bit far-fetched, right? We just heard Harold Potoff and all these people at NASA end up do a podcast, and there's no problem. But then you have like Tim Taylor working for whatever the hammer is, and Chris Lato talk about the Adjustment Bureau. Now, that is not credible to me, but you take stories like this and you're like, you wonder.
What is the purpose of the Men in Black?
That is a question.
We have encountered the Men in Black, the legitimate ones. Legitimate ones.
You have.
I didn't say me, but the answer is yes.
Who are you talking about? What do you mean the legitimate Men in Black?
There are people who are gaming knowledge of the Men in Black. But what is the purpose of the Men in Black? Is it to draw attention away from the UFO phenomenon, or using reverse psychology, draw attention to it, and the paranormal, of course? What is the purpose? It could be, they're polar opposites, the answers. That's always been the Men in Black dissuade. Do they? Knowing human psychology, do they, or do they do exactly the opposite? They draw attention to the phenomenon. And that's what I mean in my answer to you. I wanted to use an example of manipulating cultural variables, that they're drawing attention. Hey, this really exists. Now, you can also go off on the side a little bit, is say, Are we in the realm? Because I've talked to multiple people about this. Are we in the realm of what we would consider demonic influence? Have we crossed into that? That's a cultural variable too. Operating at the same level? We've got to consider all this. That's why I think this is such a wonderful topic, because you've got all these things you still have to consider. And it's now I'm going to be long gone, and Colin probably will be long gone, and you'll be long gone, and they'll still be exploring all this and not have all the answers. But that's the manipulation from my point of view of, hey, get interested in this stuff. It's real, and don't just jokingly, like the term dino beavers, that Juliet and Colum saw a dino beaver. No one said anything. That's just created to make a joke about our efforts. But this is a real phenomenon, accepted as such, and you'll see that was part of what DIA did. Collect data, collect data, collect data. The intel communities are great at doing that. But that's an answer to your question, and there's so many aspects of cultural manipulation. And I think it's positive manipulation. Using an old expression, the train has left the station. No, it hasn't. These books are proof of it. No, people can still get on the train, but those who laugh and joke, don't bother getting on the train, because you just you're not learning anything from the experience.
So George, Dr. Lukatsky just gave us a good answer, but I did notice when he was telling us that he said something about the real Men in Black and that he's actually met him or something. Can you just? We can't let that go.
You have to let it go. You have to let it go. But now the false Men in Black. Now there was an incident, and I'm not going to go into the incident, but Colin is aware of this. There was an incident of a false Men in Black. And let's assume they were working for some government agency. What they've never known and never has been revealed is the person they were interviewing obtained a gun. He was so afraid of them, he was ready to shoot it out. If they made the wrong move, it would have been a disaster. It would have come back on us in some way, I'm sure, because I was asked in an interview once, what was your greatest fear during OSUP? And it was like, it's tomorrow and the next day, because there was always something that was happening that would come back and we had to fix. But we've never revealed this person was so afraid of the false Men in Black that he had a gun tucked into his waistband under his sweatshirt.
Were you guys the false Men in
No,
Black,
we were
just
not.
like
No,
going and doing?
we were.
It was another government agency.
No,
or what?
we followed all the rules. We don't know. You
don't know who it was?
You can trace back so far, but you can't. If it was a counter intel operation by some organization, then it could have. I mean, that was a bad decision on their part. Bad. They shouldn't have pushed this fella to that point where he was ready to resort to violence in defense. And he was in his own home being potentially threatened.
Well, I think there's a long history also of, especially back in the 60s and 70s, I think everybody is aware of this, of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations having people out there trying to dissuade witnesses from talking to the media, threatening them. I think in the 50s and 60s, threats were much more overt than they would be now. But I think there's this multiple arenas of Men in Black, all of which are sort of mutually supportive in driving paranoia in witnesses and in the field in general. And a lot of these are multiple agendas for different reasons. And some of them are mimicking the real Men in Black. Some of them are the real Men in Black. It's I think it's one of these, I would class it as another example of what I call bidirectional mimicry.
Okay, but the real Men in Black, are we talking about humans or non-human intelligence? So what is the real Men in Black compared to just government agents being, interrogating people?
I think there's enough evidence in the literature to indicate that the phenomenon may be associated with some cases of what we call Men in Black.
But what are they?
Well, they're parts of the phenomenon.
Okay. So not just government agents walking around.
Well, there's government agents that are also at the same time in parallel working on, on intimidating witnesses.
I know, but I'm not talking about the government agent. I'm talking about what you're calling the real Men in Black. So you're like,
I'm saying that they're part of the phenomenon.
Okay.
I think there's enough data in the literature, especially if you go back all the way to the 1950s, to corroborate that statement.
Even in the 1800s, there was a phenomenon like that. If you read John Keel's Trojan Horse, Operation Trojan Horse, in the 1800s, there's a version of the Men in Black.
Tell me about you've heard about the UAPs, UFOs.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
So I got Men in Black. I know a lot of people are going to be like, that's crazy. But ultimately what happened is, being a member of Oversight, we follow up with whistleblowers, and we also can conduct our own investigations. So myself, Representative Burchett from Tennessee, and Representative Gates were on a small codel to the Panhandle because a whistleblower came forward from Eglin Air Force Base pilots to Representative Gates' office saying that the Air Force was essentially covering up UAP activity and we needed to look into it. So we coordinated the meeting. Pentagon tried to initially cancel the first one. We got it back on the books. We show up there and we get in, and the base commander tried to basically tell us that we didn't have authorized clearance to look into and speak to some of the witnesses, of which you don't tell Congress that we don't have the authorized clearance, especially members of House Armed Services, Oversight, and Judiciary. So I kind of had it out with the base commander, which is kind of funny because this guy really thought that he had it going on, and he actually, in the middle of our meeting, he took off on leave, which never happens with a delegation going to military base. But then also too, we had pretty sure people from the agency that were there as well. And so you really don't find that. I've worked at Hurlburt Field. I worked in the military for a number of years. And so why would a intelligence agency need to be there on a meeting for whistleblowers? So that happened. I can tell you, based on my investigations, not in a classified setting, that I absolutely believe that there is things that are advanced technologies not of human origin. And then we conducted the interview with David Grush. As you saw, it was one of the most widely attended congressional hearings in U.S. history. The information that was brought forward was particularly alarming because you're hearing about people that have potentially been murdered and covering up this information, and it was very interesting. So I advise everyone to watch it.
Anyway, that's all I got, folks. I don't know. It's interesting stuff. Have a good one.